Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to wait a couple moments for the attendees to filter in. I know we are expecting a few people. It's a small gathering for today, but we're just going to wait to see. It does take a few minutes for the attendees to filter in. And we're just going to wait a few more minutes, or fewer moments, I would say, just to see who we have trickling in. And of course, we may expect a few people to come in and out throughout the presentation.
Sounds good.
Okay, that looks like everyone we have joining us at this moment. We can just begin, and like I said, we may have more coming in throughout the presentation. Again, if you're a returning guest to our webinars, my name is Laura Gramis. This is the 2021 Citizens Academy. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. I regularly host these meetings weekly. We focus on different departments in Lehigh County just to kind of give our residents an insight into what to expect from their county government. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that today's presentation will focus on the role of the Chief Financial Officer in Lehigh County. We ask that you refrain from all questions and comments until after the panelist is finished presenting or during a break in the presentation when prompted. Any off-topic comments or questions will be withheld tonight, so please try to stay on topic with your questions. If you would like to ask a question tonight, please use the raise your hand option to be recognized. If you're joining us today by computer or mobile app, you will need to click on the raise your hand button. If you're joining us tonight by telephone, you will need to enter *9. The moderator will then unmute you and let you know you have the floor to speak. After you asked your question and it's been answered, the ability to speak will be withdrawn. So now I'm going to pass the floor on to Tim. Tim, the floor is all yours.
Very good. Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everyone. My name is Timothy Reeves. I am the Chief Fiscal Officer here at Lehigh County. I have been in this role since 2014. And tonight I'm going to go through some basic information as it relates to the fiscal office and our roles and responsibilities here at Lehigh County, some of the things that we do on an annual basis. But I'm also going to try to give you a specific framework as to the budget process and really drill down into some of the specific items and departments and how our county tax dollars are spent. I'm not going to try to bore you too much with the numbers. I'm obviously a numbers guy, so I can talk about that all day, and I'm going to try not to inundate you with that. But when you see some of the spreadsheets, I'm going to try to focus those or narrow those down into the specific topic that we're discussing tonight. So hopefully it won't be too all-encompassing. I'll try to cover maybe about half of the slides, and then I'll take a break and maybe take some questions before we get into some of the specific details. And we'll approach it that way, and hopefully I'll be able to educate you a little bit on the fiscal office and its roles and responsibilities, as well as our budgeting process and some of the items that the taxpayer dollars go for here in Lehigh County. So with that, Laura, if you want to go on to the slide number 1, we'll start with a budgeted fund structure. So here again is pretty much a total fund structure here within Lehigh County. Again, I highlighted the areas that we're going to focus on. So we're going to focus on the general fund, which consists of the operating and stabilization fund. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea as the magnitude of the total fund structure here at Lehigh County. The special revenue funds, Those are typically made up of the areas that we receive pass-through grants that come in and flow out. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those this evening, and we're not going to get into the debt service per se, or even the capital projects, because those in itself would probably be another couple-hour conversation. So for tonight, we're going to focus on just the general fund, which consists of the operating and stabilization. And the thing that I like to kind of remind people about those two funds is the operating is kind of like our checking account, and the stabilization fund is kind of like our savings account. So the sum of those two money, the money that runs through those two funds is kind of what is for the day-to-day operations here of the county outside of the special revenue funds and so forth. Down below, you can't, on your screen, if you can see, there's proprietary funds. There we go. The proprietary funds, those funds are more specific to like a business operation. We have our Cedar View apartments where the residents pay their rental fees and expenses and so forth that run through there. And then the same thing with the government center that we have listed. Those are considered more proprietary or more like individual business related funds. So those are the only two that we have specifically related to that type of structure. If you go to the next page, this again is, I'm going to give you an idea of what makes up the operating fund. And again, the operating fund is kind of like the checking account. The stabilization fund just holds the reserve money. So most of these, the activity for these departments run through the operating fund. And as we just scan through these, the first one is the elected officials. And as you can see from the list below there, elected officials is made up of everything from the commissioner to the district attorney to the coroner, the sheriff, controller, and judicial records. So each one of those have their own specific accountant and department, or what we refer to as a DOB. The next grouping, if you will, is the county executive. The county executive and his budget is comprised of the county executive, voters registration, and the public defender's office. And if you go to the next slide, Laura. This is where we get then into administration. Administration is made up of the director of administration, the general county, and then what we're going to focus on tonight is the fiscal office, Bureau of Collections, Bureau of Tax Claims, and the assessment office. So those areas fall under my direct responsibility. And just to kind of give you a idea as to these specific offices, the fiscal office is responsible for all of the financial reporting, the financial statements, budgeting, retirement and retirement payments that go out. We process the payroll through the fiscal office, and we also do all of the accounts payables and receivables, and all general accounting type functions occur within the fiscal office. The Bureau of Collections is located in the courthouse. That office is responsible for the collections of the fines and restitution and things that are set by the courts. They meet with clients on a daily basis to not only collect any of those fees, but also to work with them to set up payment plans and to work with them on different various functions related to the collections of those fines, costs. And they also work with the probation officer and office and the district attorney and so forth in making sure that we have a streamlined flow of funds associated with that. The next thing is the Bureau of Tax Claims. We at Lehigh County, we have outsourced our delinquent tax collections. We use a company called Elite Revenue, formerly known as Northeast Revenue, and they handle all of our delinquent tax collections. We handle the collections on the tax revenue initially here within the fiscal office, but when those taxes become delinquent, then we turn those over to Elite Revenue, who then works on the collection of the delinquent taxes. The next office under my area is the assessment office. The assessment office is obviously responsible for all of the assessment in Lehigh County, assessing what the residential and the commercial properties are valued at. And then that obviously gets applied to our tax rate here, not only at the county, but that assessment also is what is used for the school districts and municipalities in the collection of their taxes. So again, that's the focus of tonight, what we're talking about here, but in addition to the administration office there, continuing down the line, it also includes the IT or information technology group, the retirement administration, veterans affairs, employee benefits, procurement or purchasing, and human resources department. So again, those all fall under that administration office. The next department is the human services. Under the operating fund, that's a relatively small piece of it. It just encapsulates the director of human services. All of the other departments from children and youth and aging and so forth all fall under that special revenue area, which is money that comes in and is passed through from the state specifically. The next general area that we pick up here is the general services. General services is everything from parks and recreations to emergency management to maintenance, ag extension to the mailroom to transportation services, joint planning, the Hamilton Financial Center, the minor league ballpark, Coca-Cola Park, the detox center, and the facility out at Cedar Brook Road. So that picks up all of the general services. And if you can go to the next slide, we'll finish out the departments here. The next areas fall under the corrections or the jail. The jail is obviously consists of the jail, the community correction center, and the director of corrections. And then we have the Department of Law, and then courts, which is everything from court administration to adult and juvenile probation to the work programs, orphans court, and the magisterial district judges offices, as well as the law library. And then the final department area that falls under the operating budget is community and economic development. And again, that covers the director as well as the economic relations and the community development, and then home PA is a specific department with grants passing through there. So that gives you an idea of all of the departments that are covered under the operating budget. Again, my area is specifically related to the fiscal office and collections, the tax claim bureau, and assessments. But now I want to flip to the next slide here and just kind of give you an idea of the overall dollars associated with these fund balances that we're talking about. And again, I am going to focus in on the general fund. And as you can see from where we have it circled on there, the general fund for 12/31/2021 is just roughly over $25 million. The other special revenue funds and debt service and capital projects along with the enterprise funds, rounds out the whole financial picture of Lehigh County. But again, as those dollars represent mostly pass-through dollars that aren't typically using taxpayer dollars, we won't focus on that, and we're going to kind of focus on the $25 million plus in both the operating and stabilization fund. The comment that I'll make as it relates to the stabilization fund is years ago, the stabilization fund was created. It was determined that $25 million seemed to be the sufficient dollar amount to utilize or to have. And I know that from time to time, people have heard or referred to that as a rainy day fund. And I constantly remind people that that is not an accurate description. It really is a stabilization fund, because here in Lehigh County, all of our tax dollars are typically collected from about May through August is where the majority of those funds come in, and then the spending occurs throughout the year. So what this stabilization fund actually allows us to do is in January, February, and March, when the fund balances are down to a bare minimum, we're able to use the stabilization fund to stabilize our finances and get us through until those next tax years or tax dollars, tax bills go out, and the tax revenue starts to flow afterwards. So I just like to kind of point that out, because people again think that money is just sitting idly by, and it actually is not. It actually is very much in use throughout the year, and $25 million is proven to be the correct number for us to kind of stabilize the funds based on our abnormal cash cycle, if you will. So with that, I'd like to take a pause before we get into some of the other specific areas and dollar figures, and see if there's any questions at this point before we move on.
Okay, so if you're joining us today by computer or mobile app, please press the raise your hand button to ask a question or comment. If you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. It looks like we had a few people join us since we began. So again, if you would like to ask a question to speak, please press raise your hand. If you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. Okay, second call for any questions. If you're joining us by computer or mobile app, please press raise your hand to request to speak. If you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. And I'll give it a few moments to see if anyone's asking any questions before we move on. Final call for any questions during the break. Please press raise your hand on your computer to request to speak, or *9 by telephone. I don't see any questions from the floor, Tim. If you wanted to resume, I can put the screen back up.
Yep, perfect. We'll start on number 6 then, Laura.
Okay. And please feel free to tell me if you want to zoom into anything or zoom out.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so we'll pick up here on slide 6, which is a snapshot of our 2021 adopted budget. Again, I've drawn a line. We're going to focus everything to the left of the line as that relates to those general funds, operating and stabilization. And this is kind of where we're going to focus our attention on here tonight. So as you can see from a revenue standpoint, We have about $113.5 million of tax revenue that we're expected to collect. And then we have various grants and reimbursements that those two are passed through, meaning we typically get the grants in and we spend those money on those specific grant related items. Departmental earnings of $13.7 million basically is a lot of the stuff as it relates to the cost and fines and some of the areas in the courts and stuff where we earn revenue for those specific departments. Underneath it, it also includes the judicial costs and fines of another $4.2 million. And then we also expect to receive some investment income of about $750,000, which is significantly lower than what it has been in the past, just due to the state of the economy at this point, and interest is not earning what it used to. So that number is way down. And then we have some rents, payment in lieu of taxes, and then some just miscellaneous other revenues. The payment in lieu of taxes are people that are technically tax exempt. Sometimes if they have it within their wherewithal to pay taxes in lieu of the fact that they truly don't owe them, we do receive some money from various organizations that like to be good stewards of our community and pay something even though that they are not actually assessed anything. So that's what that represents. Then from the expenditure side, this is broken down by the areas that we had covered earlier. The elected officials make up around $26 million. The county executive and his group make up around $5 million. Administration, which is all of those areas from fiscal to IT to HR to procurement, and those specific areas is about another $24 million. The human service, which again is just more or less the director, because you see right next to her, that number of 252,000 is the $200 million that kind of flows through from human services, but that's not part of the general fund. And then we have general services of about $8 million. Corrections or the jail makes up 33. Department of Law just over $1 million, and the courts coming in at around $30 million, with community and economic development just under $1 million. So those come out to about $130 million of expenditures. Below that, the other financing sources and uses, this is a lot of our debt service and transfers to and from various departments that basically net out. And the difference between that number is $13 million is mostly made up of the debt service. After all that is said and done, we are expecting revenues of about 139, expenditures of 130, and transfers to and from our debt service of about $14 million, which results in about a $4.7 million loss for the year, which is why we show the beginning fund balance starting at $29,700,000 and ending up at just over the $25 million mark. And for the most part, we've been able to beat those projections in the past. The main reasons for that typically revolve around some of the key areas with payroll, in the sense that we typically do budget for all of the union contracts to be settled in the year that they're due to be settled. Sometimes those union contracts get rolled over from one year to the next, and therefore there are some savings in dollars in one year that get moved to the next. And we also, for the county, are self-insured for our benefits. So we use historical data to try to predict what that number is going to be. And so far, over the last several years, we've been able to beat that. So we hope that, obviously that trend continues, but we have to budget conservatively and expect things based on historical data. So that is typically, what we do and so forth. But we do expect to continue to be able to maintain a $25 million stabilization fund, as well as, a little bit, 31,295 in that operating or the checking account, which again, we have set our goals to continually be able to maintain that level of funding and so forth. So that's just basically a snapshot or a recap of our 2021 adopted budget. And the next slide is now going to, the next two slides, 7 and 8, are going to be basically a snapshot or a summation of those tax dollars. So on the previous slide where we showed the $113.6 million in tax revenue, this is where that money gets spent. So these two slides I know are typically what a lot of people are interested in seeing and understanding. And this format has been created from years back, and this is the way that we represent that. So basically, they're broken into categories. The first category is law and order. So law and order, as you can see, makes up about $78 million of the $113 million. And those are broken down into those specific categories listed out there for corrections, courts, the district attorney, the sheriff, the public defender's office, the coroner, and emergency management. So each of those areas are the makeup of that $78 million. And to the right of it is just, some people like to refer to it in cents. So for every dollar that we collect in tax revenue, 66 cents of that dollar is going towards law and order. The next category is the elected officials, which is made up of the controller and the commissioners and the county executive, coming in at $1.5 million of the tax revenue, or just over a penny of the tax revenue is comprised or spent on those elected official areas. The next area is the debt service that I referred to. Right now, the county has been averaging in that 12 to $14 million a year in annual debt service, but we have in 2023 a significant drop, meaning that we'll have paid back a big piece of our debt associated with the jail and the courthouse. And that number is going to drop in 2023 by about half of that amount, which will obviously make our ability to maintain the stabilization fund and to generate a profit versus a loss much more attainable in 2023. The next category or the next area is the quality of life. And again, those areas you can, kind of go down there and see are made up of voters registration, parks and trails, Atlanta joint planning, the Ag Extension Center, the conservation and ag land, as well as community and economic development, the Coca-Cola Park, and Veterans Affairs. And those quality of life initiatives come out to just over $6 million, or a little over 5 cents of every taxpayer dollar. those are the big areas. And then the next page, Laura, on 8, then gets into the human services piece of it. Just over $5 million of county tax dollars go towards human services, and that covers the stuff that is not covered with the pass-through grants. So there is some money that we have to cover for some of the human service areas that is not covered with pass-through money, and that amounts to about $5 million, or a little about 4.5 cents of taxpayer dollars. Capital projects obviously vary from year to year. This particular one is just over $1 million. The nursing home, again, most of their money is based on the money that they receive from residents, as well as Medicare and Medicaid, and other funding sources that they receive out there. But the county or the taxpayer dollar does typically give them an additional $2 to $3 million a year. This year, we're projecting it to be about 2.575, or just over 2 cents of every taxpayer dollar goes towards our nursing home. All other functions make up everything else that aren't included in those areas. Again, those things would be everything from fiscal and IT and HR and purchasing, and some of those specific areas that are not captured in any of the other line items, making up about $9 million, or around 8 cents of every taxpayer dollar. And then the stabilization fund obviously kicks in and pays for the shortfall that we have budgeted, and that's how we come to the $113,554,685 in taxpayer dollar revenues. So again, those two pages really are a summation of where your tax dollars are spent in those specific categories and items. Next page, Laura. Again, this one is going to look very busy, but we're going to try to focus in on the 2021 column, which I have kind of blocked off there, so hopefully you can see that. This is basically what we had talked about earlier from the revenue side, which is the same makeup of that $139 million. But on the expenditure side, rather than breaking it down by department, this breaks it down by expenditure type. So this shows you how much of the expenditures are paying for the salary and the benefits and the retiree benefit portion, and then broken down into the other categories of travel and transportation, professional and technical services, the grants and contracts and subsidies, as well as materials, operating supplies, and other operating expenditures, as well as the capital expenditures. That sums up to the same $130 million that we had shown before by department, but just broken down a little bit differently into those specific categories. And then below that, the same thing with the other sources. It's a breakdown of those transfers, as well as the debt service and debt payments that we had talked about earlier. And that then comes down to the same net loss of the 4.668705 for the year. And again shows what our ending fund balance is projected to be. Now, this is what we refer to as our 5-year plan. So a few years ago, some of the commissioners had asked for us to put together a 5-year plan rather than just submit an annual budget, because it kind of gave them an idea as to what some of the changes that might be occurring down the road and what some of those expectations could be. If you are able to follow me here under the other sources and uses for debt payments, if you see in the area for 2021, it's 13.99 million, and then the next year it goes to 14.3 million. But then the following year in 2023 is where I said it drops down to about $6.2 million. So that is kind of the year that we've been working towards. And thank you, Laura, for highlighting that for anyone that wasn't able to find that. This is just kind of an idea as to what we were talking about, where we expect those drops to happen and should create or give us some additional leeway with cash flow.
Tim, I'm going to pause you right there. I apologize. My computer lagged and I highlighted too much. I'm going to try to get rid of all this extra highlight.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's, there you go. That's the
there we go.
Yep, perfect. And Laura, if you can move that down just so that you can see the ending fund balance. That's the next thing I want to show. So this ending fund balance is where, again, with our 5-year model that we've been trying to put together, is to to represent or to show that we are in fact able to maintain $25 million or more on an annual basis. And the reason that 24.5 is highlighted is 2022 is the only year at this point that shows that we may not be able to make that $25 million mark. But we're certainly going to hope between now and the actual results for 2021 and 2022 that we make up some of that difference and easily maintain that $25 million stabilization fund throughout this period. So this, again, is something that we go over several times throughout the year with our commissioners. Administration, myself, sit down and put together this model, and then we represent it and present it to the commissioners. And in conjunction, with that, that's what a lot of our topic around the financing has been is this 5-year model and being able to maintain again $25 million in stabilization. What this model doesn't take into effect at this point is some of the CARES Act money that we received last year. Again, most of those funds were they came in and were distributed out to various organizations. And so although that was money well spent, it didn't necessarily impact our bottom line in the fact that, again, most of that money came in and was dispersed. We have heard that we are to be in line for some additional funding starting this year under the American Rescue Plan, and we will be working closely with the commissioners and various people within the county to come up with the strategy on how that money will be spent and utilized. And again, those dollars are not factored into this model at this time. And the last page that we have in there was, I just put this in here just as a historical number from the assessment side of things. I was not here when the assessment was based off of a 50% assessment. I think it was in 2013 when we did our last reassessment, and we went to 100% valuation. And so you see that the totals for the assessment total grew significantly in 2013, and that's what has been in place since I have been here. If you look at the tax rate, you can see that in 2013 the tax rate was 3.79 mils. It dropped down to 3.75 in 2015, dropped again in 16 to 3.68, and then again in 17 to 3.64. And then 2020 is when we had a nominal increase, bringing it back to 3.78. So the 2021 budget is based off an assessment total of 30.5 billion in assessed value of properties, taxed at the millage rate of 3.78, gives us our estimated tax revenue of the $115 million. So that again is just more of a historical piece of information, but I know that some people are aware of the fact that we did do a reassessment in 2013, and so I just wanted to include that in there as part of the discussion. So that is basically how Lehigh County Fiscal Office is made up of, what we do, as well as a pretty, hopefully a short but sweet explanation on how county taxpayer dollars are spent, a little information on our 5-year plan, as well as the assessment and how that's changed over the years. So without boring you to death with numbers, I didn't want to go any deeper than that, but I am certainly happy to answer or entertain any questions as it relates to the fiscal office and our functions, or the budgeting process, or the 5-year plan, or any of the assessment discussion. So I'll open it up to questions, Laura.
Thank you, Tim. So again, if you would like to ask a question, if you're joining us by computer or mobile app, please press raise your hand on the computer. If you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. So again, raise your hand on computer or *9 by telephone to ask a question. I will now open the floor to see if anyone would like to comment. And again, if you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. Computer or mobile app is the raise your hand feature to ask a question. Okay, I don't see any questions from the floor. I would like to remind everyone also who's attending the webinar tonight, you will receive a copy of the presentation in case you missed anything, you're taking notes, and you want to look back and reference. Also, if you have any other questions for me, you can always reach out to my email, lauragramis@lehighcounty.org, for any follow-ups. Tim, do you have any final comments you would like to add?
No, I just thank everyone who has attended, and I hope that that I answered all of your questions as I went through that. But certainly, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out through Laura or any other way that is appropriate, and I'll be happy to answer questions. We do have budget hearings that are starting in probably August. We'll put together this year's 2022 budget from June through July, and then present it in August, and then there'll be meetings and so forth that will occur. So if you're interested and would like to see or be more part of that process, feel free to join us in August and September for those meetings. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. I also want to remind everyone a copy of this webinar recording will be available on the Lehigh County website and Facebook page. Next week, we will be hosting our Citizens Academy with Director Janine Donati, Department of Corrections. Any questions or anything further, like I said, please feel free to shoot me an email. Other than that, I'm going to let you guys all go for the night. Have a good one.
Thanks, Laura.